Have you ever watched an entire billion-dollar company collapse because one person walked away? Most people think corporations run on software, executives, and fancy presentations. They're wrong. They run on the handful of people who actually know how everything works. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done? And from where are you, and what is the time in your country? My name is Rebecca Hayes, and for 23 years, I was one of those people. I wasn't a vice president. I didn't have a corner office overlooking the skyline. I worked in a gray cubicle buried deep inside the operations department of Titan Freight Solutions, where the coffee tasted like burnt rubber and every printer sounded like it was dying. And I loved it because from that little cubicle, I could see everything. I knew when a strike on the West Coast would create shortages thousands of miles away before the news even heard rumors about it. I knew which carriers inflated invoices and which ones would drive through a snowstorm simply because they trusted my word. I knew which warehouse managers were reliable and which ones needed 3 phone calls before lunch just to do their jobs. More importantly, everyone else knew I knew. That's why what happened next shocked the entire industry. Before I tell you how I accidentally became the nightmare of my former employer, let me explain how it started. Like most disasters, it began with a leadership change. The founder of Titan Freight, Richard Lawson, finally retired. The man wasn't exactly warm and friendly. He could negotiate contracts with the same expression someone uses while scheduling dental surgery. But he understood logistics. He understood relationships. Most importantly, he respected competence. Then his son arrived. Ethan Lawson, 33 years old. Expensive suits. Perfect smile. Business school degree framed on the wall. Confidence overflowing from every sentence. Knowledge of actual operations. Practically zero. His first week as CEO, he redesigned the executive floor. His second week, he hired consultants. His third week, he launched a company initiative called Future Vision Alignment. Nobody knew what that meant, not even Ethan. Around the same time, a woman named Madison appeared. Officially, she was an executive strategy advisor. Unofficially, everyone knew exactly why she was there. The two were inseparable. Every meeting, every event, every photo opportunity. While the rest of us were keeping freight moving across the country, they were busy talking about company culture and personal branding. I ignored it. I'd survived recessions, fuel crisis, natural disasters, attacks. A spoiled rich kid wasn't going to scare me. At least that's what I believed. The friction started slowly. Ethan hated anything he considered old-fashioned. Unfortunately, I represented everything he disliked. I preferred phone calls over messaging apps. I kept handwritten notes. I trusted experience more than software dashboards. To him, I looked outdated. To me, he looked decorative. One Tuesday afternoon, I was negotiating a major 5-year transportation agreement with one of our most important port partners. Millions of dollars were riding on that call. The discussion had already lasted nearly 4 hours. Then Ethan stopped beside my desk. "Rebecca," he didn't even wait for me to answer. "You really should clean this workspace. Investors are touring next week." I covered my phone receiver. "I'm negotiating the Gulf contract right now." He glanced at the stacks of documents spread across my desk. "We have systems for all that now. Everything should be digital." I looked directly at him. "If I stop using these files today, you lose the contract tomorrow." He smiled the way people smile at children who still believe in magic. That's not how modern business works. Then he walked away. Madison laughed beside him. On the phone, the port director sighed. "Everything okay over there?" "Never better," I replied. "Let's finish this deal." 3 hours later, the contract was signed. Titan Freight would earn tens of millions from it over the next few years. Did anyone thank me? No. Instead, I received an email reminding me about desk organization standards. That should have been my warning. But the real problem wasn't the work. It never is. What destroys loyalty isn't workload, it's disrespect. And Ethan Lawson was about to make a very expensive mistake. By October, shipping season was reaching its peak. Every warehouse was overloaded. Every truck was booked. Every manager was working overtime. I was pulling 12-hour shifts nearly every day. Then an invitation landed in my inbox. Subject: Mandatory Leadership Celebration. Ethan's birthday party hosted at the Lawson family estate. Attendance required for all senior personnel. The event happened to be scheduled on the single busiest weekend of the month. The same weekend, I was supervising a pharmaceutical shipment worth millions of dollars. The cargo required live monitoring. Missing it wasn't an option. So, I sent a simple reply. Happy birthday, Ethan. Unfortunately, I cannot attend. I'll be overseeing the pharmaceutical transport operation that evening. Hope you have a great celebration. Regards, Rebecca Hayes. Professional, polite, reasonable. I thought that would be the end of it. I had no idea that email would start a chain reaction that would eventually bring Titan Freight to its knees. The next morning felt wrong. The moment I walked into the building, the usual noise was missing. Conversation stopped when I passed. People looked at me, then quickly looked away. After more than 2 decades in logistics, I'd learned to trust that feeling. Something bad was coming. I sat at my desk and logged into my workstation. Access denied. I frowned. Typed the password again. Access denied. That's strange. Before I could call it, I heard footsteps across. I turned around. Ethan stood there with Madison at his side. 2 security guards waited behind them. Neither guard looked happy to be involved. Rebecca, Ethan said, straightening his jacket. We've decided to make some organizational changes. My stomach tightened. What kind of changes? We're restructuring leadership. Madison stepped forward, holding a clipboard. Your behavior has shown a lack of commitment to team culture. I stared at her. Team culture? Ethan folded his arms. You've resisted modernization. You've been difficult to work with. And frankly, your refusal to participate in company initiatives has raised concerns. Company initiatives meaning his birthday party. You're firing me? Ethan didn't answer immediately. That told me everything. We're moving in a different direction. I looked around the office. 23 years of weekends, late nights, emergency calls, snowstorms, supply chain crisis, and this was how it ended. Not because of performance, not because of mistakes, because I skipped a party. Madison smiled. We need people aligned with our vision. I laughed, not loudly, just enough. The security guards exchanged glances. Ethan looked annoyed. Something funny, actually. Yes. I stood from my chair. Do either of you understand what I do here? Silence. I manage contracts tied to nearly every major transportation partner we have. I oversee compliance approvals. I maintain relationships with carriers, port authorities, customs brokers, and regional unions. If I disappear overnight, half your network stops answering calls. Ethan shook his head. Nobody is indispensable, Rebecca. That's where you're wrong. For the first time all morning, he looked irritated. Hand over your badge. I looked at the photo frame on my desk. My golden retriever Cooper, the stacks of notes, the legal pads, the folders everyone mocked until something went wrong. Then suddenly, everyone needed Rebecca. I picked up the photo, placed it inside my purse. Then I removed my ID badge. No arguments, no shouting, no tears. I simply dropped it into Ethan's hand. Good luck, I said. His smile widened. He expected me to beg. I didn't. As I walked toward the elevator, he called after me. You'll be replaced by the end of the week. I stopped, turned around, and smiled. Maybe the elevator doors closed before he could answer. As the building disappeared behind metal doors, I checked the time. 9:17 a.m. The first wave of problems would start before lunch. Not because I planned revenge, because Ethan had just removed the person holding everything together, and he didn't even realize it. Outside, cold rain tapped against the pavement. I crossed the parking lot and climbed into my SUV. For a moment, I simply sat there. Most people panic after losing a career. I didn't. I was angry. But underneath the anger was clarity. A company can fire an employee. What it can't instantly replace is trust. And trust was what I actually managed, not software, not spreadsheets. Trust. I pulled out my personal phone. Unlike most employees, I never mix personal and corporate communications. Years ago, I'd learned that lesson the hard way. Every major partner had my personal email address for emergencies. Port directors, union representatives, customs managers, fleet operators, people I'd worked beside for decades. I opened Gmail. A blank message appeared. I took my time writing it. No emotions, no threats, no accusations, just facts. Subject: change in authorized contact status to whom it may concern. Effective immediately, I am no longer employed by Titan Freight Solutions. As a result, I am no longer authorized to represent the company regarding active agreements, vendor negotiations, compliance certifications, or transportation approvals. Please review any contractual provisions related to key personnel continuity and management transition requirements. Future inquiries should be directed to Ethan Lawson, Chief Executive Officer. Regards, Rebecca Hayes. I read it. Professional, legally flawless. Then I pressed send. One email became 10, 10 became 30, 30 became over 100. Every important relationship I'd built during 23 years received the same notification. No drama, just information. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed a familiar name. Victor Ramirez, head of GF Coast Transportation Union. Rebecca, tell me this email is a joke. Afraid not. You left, got fired this morning. There was silence, then a long whistle. Does Ethan understand you finalized our 5-year agreement 3 days ago? Apparently not. Another silence, then Victor laughed. The kind of laugh people make when they realize a disaster is approaching someone else. Who's handling hazardous cargo approvals tonight? I leaned back in my seat. Probably Ethan. Maybe Madison. Victor laughed even harder. Absolutely not. My drivers aren't touching regulated loads without somebody competent overseeing them. That's your choice. Damn right it is. The call ended. First domino. 5 minutes later, another call arrived. Then another and another. Questions, concerns, requests for clarification. Nobody was angry. They were worried not about me, about Titan. That was when I realized something important. These people never trusted the company. They trusted the people inside it. And Ethan had just fired one of those people. By noon, the consequences were already beginning. But Ethan still thought he'd won. He had no idea the real storm hadn't even started yet. I didn't drive home. Sitting in my apartment staring at the walls wasn't going to help. Instead, I headed to a small roadside diner a few miles from headquarters. It was the kind of place where truck drivers gathered at all hours. Greasy booths, strong coffee, no nonsense. Exactly my kind of environment. The waitress, Carol, recognized me immediately. Long day already? You could say that. The usual. Make it a double. She nodded and filled a mug large enough to float a canoe. I opened my laptop and settled into a corner booth. Almost instantly, my phone began vibrating. Unknown numbers, carrier managers, port offices, dispatch supervisors, and then Ethan. I watched his name flash across the screen, declined. 5 seconds later, he called again, declined. A third time, still declined. For 23 years, I'd answered every emergency call. Today wasn't my emergency. I took a sip of coffee. It tasted better than usual, probably because freedom was mixed into it. At exactly 11:20 a.m., Titan's daily operations meeting began. Normally, I ran it. Every warehouse manager, fleet coordinator, and dispatch supervisor relied on that meeting. Without it, confusion spread quickly. Today, Ethan and Madison were running things. I imagined them standing in front of experienced operations staff trying to explain why vendors suddenly wanted reassurances and legal reviews. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Linda from payroll. Rebecca, are you really gone? Looks that way. Oh my God, what's happening? Linda hesitated. Ethan is screaming at it. Apparently nobody can access several vendor portals. I smiled. That wasn't sabotage, it was neglect. Years earlier, I had configured multiple security systems, not because I wanted control, because nobody else cared enough to do it properly. The authentication approvals were still tied to my authorization profile. Everyone knew about it. Nobody bothered updating it. Now the company was discovering what happens when you ignore maintenance. Linda lowered her voice. He says, "You locked him out." "I didn't lock anyone out. I just stopped being employed there. That's not the same thing." Another call arrived before she could answer. This time it was one of Titan's largest fuel providers. I switched lines. "Rebecca, good timing. What's going on over there? We received notice of your departure." "Correct. Who's handling fleet authorization now?" "Ethan Lawson." The representative paused. "Has he completed compliance review?" "Not to my knowledge." Another pause. Then came the words I expected. "We're temporarily suspending automatic credit extensions until we complete a management review." "Makes sense. Thank you." When the call ended, I looked out the diner window. Rain dripped down the glass. A strange calm settled over me. I wasn't destroying anything. The system was protecting itself. Every vendor had risk protocols. Every contract had continuity clauses. Every partner had procedures. All I had done was leave. Titan's leadership simply never understood what leaving would mean. The next call came from a customs brokerage firm, then a warehouse consortium, then a regional trucking alliance. Each conversation followed the same questions, concerns, temporary pauses, additional reviews. The machine was slowing down, not because anyone hated Titan, because nobody trusted Ethan. Trust takes years to build. It can disappear in a morning. At 12:37 p.m., my phone exploded with another incoming call. "Madison, Curiosity 1, I answered. "Rebecca," her voice sounded frantic. "You have to help us." "Help with what?" "The drivers can't access several secured facilities. The vendors won't approve invoices. The dispatch systems are freezing." I frowned. Freezing? Interesting choice of words. Madison nearly screamed. "Stop being difficult. We're trying to run a company here. Then perhaps you shouldn't have fired the people running it." A sharp silence followed. Then Ethan's voice appeared on speaker. "Enough games. You need to provide access immediately." "Access to what?" "You know exactly what." "Actually, I don't. Everything you're describing belongs to Titan Freight. Not me. The company can't function." "That's unfortunate, Rebecca." "No, Ethan. You said I was replaceables. Now seems like the perfect opportunity to prove it." I heard something crash in the background. Probably a coffee mug, maybe a laptop, maybe Ethan's confidence. Hard to say. "Listen carefully," he snapped. "If you don't cooperate, I'll sue you." "For what sabotage?" I laughed. A real laugh this time. "Ethan, I didn't touch a single company system. You terminated my employment. Your own security policies removed my authorization. That's not sabotage. That's your decision working exactly as intended." His breathing grew heavier. "People are losing money because of this. Then perhaps you should have considered that before firing the person managing critical operations." Another silence, longer this time. Then he tried a different approach. "Come back. We'll discuss everything." The offer came too late. "No thank you, Rebecca. Good luck, Ethan." I ended the call. The diner suddenly felt very quiet. Carol arrived with more coffee. "You look like somebody just handed you a winning lottery ticket." "Not exactly. What's happening?" I stared into the dark coffee. "A very expensive lesson." "For who?" "My former boss." Outside. Trucks rolled along the highway. Business continued. Freight kept moving. The world didn't stop. But somewhere across town, Titan Freight's executive offices were beginning to understand a painful truth. Fancy titles don't run companies. People do. And by early afternoon, the first major cracks were already spreading through the foundation. The collapse had officially begun. By mid-afternoon, the entire logistics industry knew something was wrong at Titan Freight. The major news networks didn't care yet. To them, logistics was invisible. Trucks moved, packages arrived, store shelves stayed full. Nobody paid attention unless something broke. But inside the transportation world, people were talking. Trade forums were exploding. Dispatch groups were buzzing. Industry's insiders were making phone calls, and every conversation seemed to include my name. I was sitting in the diner working through another cup of coffee when my phone rang again. This time, the caller made me pause. Daniel Cross, Regional Vice President of Horizon Global Logistics, Titan's largest competitor. Daniel had been trying to recruit me for years. Every Christmas he'd call. Every promotion cycle he'd call. Every time Titan ignored my contributions, he'd somehow hear about it and call. I always said no. Not because I loved Titan, because I believed loyalty mattered. Apparently, I was the only one. Rebecca. Daniel sounded unusually cheerful. Tell me the rumors are true. Depends which rumor. The one where Titan fired the smartest person in the company. I laughed then. Yes, the rumor is accurate. There was a brief pause. Where are you? At a diner. Excellent. Stay there. Why? Because we're having lunch. Daniel, not asking. Telling. An hour later, a black luxury sedan pulled into the parking lot. Carol nearly dropped a coffee pot when she saw it. You secretly rich? Not yet. Daniel was already seated when I arrived at a private downtown restaurant. He stood and shook my hand. You look surprisingly calm for someone who just lost their job. I lost a job. I didn't lose myself. That's why you're valuable. We sat. The waiter brought menus. Neither of us opened them. We both knew this wasn't about food. Titan is bleeding, Daniel said. How bad? Worse every hour. We've already received requests from several of their major customers. Transfer requests. Emergency consultations. Same thing. I nodded. Makes sense. Daniel leaned forward. I want you to come work for Horizon Vice President. Full authority. Direct reporting line to me. No corporate babysitters. No culture consultants. No influencers pretending to be executives. I smiled. He had done his homework. What's the catch? There isn't one. I don't need another manager. I need someone who actually understands logistics. For the first time all day, I seriously considered the future. Not revenge, not Titan. My future. After 23 years, maybe it was time. Daniel continued. You bring your expertise. You build the division your way. You hire who you trust. Create the standards. The offer was tempting. Dangerously tempting. Then my phone buzzed. An emergency industry alert. I opened it. The blood drained from my face. Daniel immediately noticed. What happened? I stared at the screen. No. The notification contained a preliminary transportation incident report. A Titan freight vehicle carrying regulated industrial chemicals had been involved in a major highway accident. Hazardous materials were leaking. Emergency crews were responding. My stomach dropped. That shipment. I knew that shipment. I had personally reviewed its compliance requirements earlier in the week. The carrier assigned to it was highly trained, highly certified, extremely reliable. Unless I immediately dialed Victor, he answered on the first ring. Rebecca, tell me that's not one of your drivers. It's not, his voice sounded furious. Then who was driving? A replacement. My heart sank. What replacement? Ethan hired somebody off a digital freight marketplace. Apparently, he was desperate to move the load. I closed my eyes. Dear God, the driver wasn't properly certified. Victor's silence confirmed everything. The weight of the situation crashed down on me. This wasn't delayed freight. This wasn't a misdelivery. This was public safety. People could get hurt. The company could face federal investigations. Lives could be changed forever. Is the driver alive? Barely, but he'll survive. The road won't be open for hours. EPA teams are already heading there. Daniel leaned back slowly, the situation finally registering. That's catastrophic. No, I looked up. Catastrophic is what happens next, because regulators are going to ask one question. Who approved the shipment? And Titan won't have a good answer. My phone rang again, then again, then again. Industry contacts, orders, customers. Everyone wanted information. Everyone wanted reassurance. Everyone wanted someone competent. Unfortunately for Titan, they had fired that person this morning. Daniel folded his hands. The company is finished. I nodded. Not today. Not tomorrow. But eventually, yes, because logistics runs on trust, and trust had just spilled all over a highway along with several thousand gallons of industrial chemicals. The room fell silent. Daniel finally pushed a contract across the table. Vice President of Strategic Operations, your office, your team, your rules. I looked down at the papers, then out the window. Somewhere across the city, Ethan Lawson was probably still convinced he could fix everything. He couldn't. The avalanche had already started, and for the first time in 23 years, I wasn't standing underneath it. I was standing safely on the other side, watching it come down. By evening, Titan Freight's headquarters looked less like a corporate office and more like the scene of disaster. Police vehicles filled sections of the parking lot. Reporters were gathering outside. Emergencies were happening on every floor. Phones rang nonstop, and nobody seemed to have answers. Meanwhile, I had just signed the contract with Horizon Global Logistics, 23 years at one company, gone with a single signature. You'd think I would feel guilty. Instead, I felt exhausted. Daniel arranged a temporary office for me inside Horizon's headquarters. The view overlooked the harbor. Ships lined the horizon. Thousands of containers moved through the terminals below, the entire supply chain humming along like a giant machine. Unlike Titan's machine, this one still worked. I was halfway through reviewing transition paperwork when another call arrived. Arthur Reynolds, Titan's chief legal counsel. If Arthur was calling personally, things were worse than I thought, Rebecca. His voice sounded tired. Very tired. Rough day. You could say that. What's happening? Arthur sighed. The Department of Transportation has seized operational records. Federal investigators are involved. The board is in emergency session. And Ethan, long pause, panicking. That didn't surprise me. What do you need? The board wants to make an offer. I laughed. Arthur didn't. They're serious. How serious? Very. Name your number. Serious. I leaned back. Interesting. Go on. They want you to come back. Not permanently. Consulting. Help stabilize operations. Help communicate with regulators. Help prevent total collapse. I stared out the window. 23 years of loyalty. One morning of disrespect. And now they wanted rescue. What exactly changed? Arthur's answer came immediately. The board finally realized you weren't replaceable. I almost laughed again. Too late. That's what I told them. Then why are you calling? Because Richard Lawson is coming home. That got my attention. The founder, his private jet landed an hour ago. And Arthur exhaled slowly. He's furious. With Ethan, with everyone, including you. I wasn't surprised. Richard Lawson built Titan. Watching it collapse in a single day couldn't be easy. He's demanding answers. Arthur continued. The board thinks you're the only person he'll actually listen to. I considered that. Richard and I had always respected each other. Not friends, not family, but professionals. And professionals understand reality. I'll think about it. Arthur lowered his voice. Rebecca, for what it's worth, you were right about what? Everything. The line went dead. I sat quietly for several seconds. Then my phone buzzed again. A text message, unknown number. The message contained only 3 words. We need you. Followed by an address. Titan headquarters. Boardroom. 8:00 p.m. No signature. No explanation. I already knew who sent it. Richard Lawson. The old man never wasted words. I looked at the clock. 7:12 p.m. Daniel walked into the office. You look like somebody just received a challenge. Maybe I did. He noticed the message. That's from Titan. Yes. What are you going to do? I stood. I'm going to hear what they have to say. Daniel smiled. Closure. Something like that. The drive across town felt strange. Only that morning I'd been an employee. Now I was arriving as an outsider. When I reached headquarters, the atmosphere was surreal. News vans lined the street, employees clustered near entrances. Security officers stood everywhere. The building looked wounded, as if the chaos inside had somehow become visible from the outside. The guard at the entrance recognized me immediately. "Welcome back, Rebecca." "Not back, just visiting." The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, the hallway was silent. No assistants, no executives, no chatter, only tension. The boardroom doors stood open. Inside sat 12 directors, several attorneys. Arthur, and at the head of the table, Richard Lawson, the founder, looked older than I remembered. Not weak, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from watching years of work unravel. Everyone turned as I entered. Richard didn't stand. Neither did I. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. "You took half my company in one day." No greeting, no small talk. Classic Richard. I pulled out a chair. "No," I corrected him. "Your son gave it away." A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Richard's eyes narrowed. "You always were direct. And you always claimed to value honesty." For the first time, I saw the faintest hint of a smile. Then it vanished. The room grew serious again. Arthur slid a stack of reports toward me. The damage assessment. I glanced through them. Paused shipments, frozen contracts, regulatory reviews, client departures, millions in losses, and the number kept climbing. Richard watched me read. "Well, you want my professional opinion? That's why you're here." I closed the folder. Titan isn't having an operational crisis. It's having a leadership crisis. Silence. Several directors looked away. Richard remained focused. "Continue. Your vendors don't trust Ethan. Your carriers don't trust Ethan. Your customers don't trust Ethan. Your employees don't trust Ethan. Trust is the foundation of logistics. Without it, nothing moves." Richard leaned back. "And whose fault is that?" "Yours." The answer hit the room like a grenade. Several directors visibly flinched. Richard didn't. "Interesting. You promoted someone who wasn't ready. You ignored warnings. You rewarded confidence instead of competence. And when people raised concerns nobody lists." The founder stared at me for several seconds, then slowly nodded. Finally, someone said it out loud. The room fell silent. For the first time all evening, nobody argued because everybody knew it was true. And this worst part, the conversation was only getting started.